What's going on, everybody? James Rontesesher or Dre coming back at you with another video. This time, right now, I am outside of my former high school as seen over there, La Quinta High in La Quinta, California. I'm just hanging out at the public park right outside of the school premises for right now. Just hanging out here and before I'm waiting for a sushi restaurant that I like in La Quinta, California open. And I thought I might do another video in relation to school and getting into the real world. I made a 3-part series, I believe, or 2-part series a couple years ago on my YouTube channel called Entering the Real World, talking about young kids going to school or getting a job once they go straight out of high school and giving them advice. But I thought I might go ahead and go further detail into another subject, specifically about college. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I did in fact graduate from college. I went to this local community college in the Coachella Valley in Palm Desert called College of the Desert, where I was there for 4 years. And I eventually graduated with a degree in liberal arts, humanities, and communications, mainly because I actually wanted to get out of there, and I was taking a lot of classes just to feel around, see what I like during my 4-year span there. But I eventually decided to discontinue furthering my education because, as I found out in my last year of school in college, honestly nowadays, college is not so much a worthwhile investment as it used to be years ago, generations ago. And I've found my research, there are several reasons why. For one thing, there's too many people going to college. Another thing, college is becoming way too expensive. And also, there's more opportunities elsewhere outside of just going to college and getting a degree. Then finally, college disregards the fact that it's not the degree that matters ultimately in life. It has to do with your intelligence and your drive and your drive to do something with yourself in life. Now, first of all, this is one of the main problems, first of all, about everyone going to school. Okay? See, what I found out in my research was that years ago, going to college was more so worth it because not everyone was going to college. See, but nowadays, pretty much every single able-bodied high school kid who's not mentally retarded is deciding to go to school. And honestly, that's not a good thing. Because here's the thing. College was more so worth it back in the days because not everyone was going for it. So that was a way for you to stand out in the marketplace compared to everyone else, given that not everyone else had a degree. But nowadays, because of the fact that pretty much every single kid is going to college, what has happened is that we have a marketplace of young adults who have nothing to offer except for the same degrees, which honestly have no real life value in the real world. I found out in one of my main channels on YouTube that I like, I forget what the name is, but this one guy discussed how college is a scam, and he found out the statistic that 83% of all college seniors do not have a job set up for them upon graduation. And I can see that the reason why is because what we've been told ever since we were kids in middle school, elementary school, by our teachers and by a lot of our parents is, oh, go to college, study your passion, and everything else will follow, and you'll get a job in no time. Well, what do we have now? We have a lot of young kids that are graduating with all these worthless degrees in abstract subject matter that has no value, like communications, liberal arts, gender studies, and history, and so forth. and they cannot find any job related to their degree in the real world. So what happens with a lot of these kids is they end up getting a regular job they could have gotten straight out of high school, in which they didn't need the degree for, and they have to move back home with their parents or move into an apartment or a house and reign it out with a bunch of people they honestly don't like. And what even sucks more for them is the fact that they have to pay back all the student loans that they've received from their education. I've researched this recently, and it says that about 40 million Americans now have student loan debt, with a average amount of $30,000 per capita, with a total amount of $1.6 trillion. $1.6 trillion. And economists have said that the college education bubble could cause another recession. Just like the housing market bubble over 10 years ago caused the Great Recession. Now, what's something else along those lines is that given that college is so expensive, you really start to think, is it even a worthwhile investment? You know, with many universities costing thousands or tens of thousands of dollars per semester, you know, and then you're graduating with a worthless degree that has no value in the real world. It's like, is this even really something worthwhile? Now, I'm not saying that going to college, you should forego it altogether, but go for something that's actually out there. You know, if you want to go to college to go into the STEM field, which is science, technology, engineering, and medicine, then that's great. That's actually more worthwhile. Or you want to be an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor, something like that. But everything else is honestly not worth it. I personally think that if colleges actually offer degree programs and education programs nowadays that actually had value and were in demand in the marketplace and for jobs and employers, a lot of these colleges nowadays would, given their business model, would go out of business, or they would just go from this big to that small, because most degrees just won't do anything for you. And what I found out is that the harder a degree is, the more valuable it is. But even along those lines, if you become a doctor, you're most likely going to have to get a PhD or a master's or doctorate in medicine. And there has been this whole notion that going to college will enable you to make $1 million more during the course of your lifetime. But honestly, look at this. You might make $1 million more than someone else who didn't graduate from high school, or someone who just graduated from high school. But here's something else. You also have to pay back all those student loans for your education to get that degree. And a master's degree and a PhD and doctorate will cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, unless you come from a privileged, rich family background and they're willing to pay off for your education, or you have a lot of great scholarships and whatever. So you might make this much money over the course of your lifetime, but you still have that much money to pay back. So this is the amount that you actually make in your lifetime. Now, discussing about all young kids going to school out of high school, I honestly don't think it's a good idea. Because here's the thing. Even though you're 18 years old or in your early 20s, given my own personal experience, how I was when I was younger, and seeing how all these other kids were around my age and even still today, you're still a naive little kid that has a lot to learn about real world and life. And you honestly don't know yourself and where you want to go. So putting a kid directly into school after high school when they don't know themselves and what they want to do with their lives is not a good idea. I think that young people should honestly go ahead and take time off from school and explore, try new things, maybe work in several jobs, go and travel the world, and get involved in different activities in order to get to know themselves. And then they'll be able to figure out what it is they want to do with their life. Now, see, after I graduated from college, I decided to take part in that. And I did my research and I found out that what was more worthwhile to go for as far as making a living and a career was learning the trades. So while I was in school, I didn't have to worry about student loans or whatever. I went to community college, which is only several $100s a month for a semester, several $100 per semester. And I had it set up with my father at that time, in which as long as I was working for him at his independent BMW shop and I was making good grades and I wasn't fucking around, basically, that he would pay off for my schooling education. And I was learning a trade and a skill through him working on cars, but then eventually I realized that honestly, this is not what I want to do for a living. I'm pretty good at working on cars, but it's not something that I see myself doing professionally. So I did my research and I found out that there are other trades in which you can make a very good living out of, and which are not as costly and are more valuable in the real world, like being a plumber, electrician, a heating air conditioning repairman, a solar installer. You can also do what I was doing as a mechanic. So what I did was, after I graduated from school, I decided that I was going to go ahead and try some of this stuff out. So one of my dad's best friends, he owns his own plumbing and construction business. So I interviewed him. I asked him a bunch of questions about his profession and how he likes it. And he saw that I was interested in what I was asking him about. And he said, "Hey, do you want to go ahead and maybe see about trying out what we do for a living? And I can give you some side work on a project and see how you like it." So I agreed to it, and I helped him and all his other employees help out on a repiping of this expensive, fancy house in this nearby town called Indian Wells. And it actually wasn't bad. I was digging ditches, digging holes, and filling holes, but it wasn't that bad for me. So what they did was, eventually, being pleased with my work, they gave me a part-time job as a shop manager over at his plumbing business. So I did that for a few months, and I also did some side work with him in his construction business. But then after a while, I realized that honestly, this isn't for me, because although I like the challenge of working with my hands to fix things, I didn't like the idea of working outside and working in the elements. Being out in the heat, being out in the cold, being out in the rain, it just wasn't for me. I don't like that. Especially living here in the Coachella Valley, when during the summer it can get to 110 degrees, sometimes over 120 degrees, and it get to about 30 to 40% humidity. No, I can't do that. And I also interviewed one of my cousins who has his own electrical company, and he asked me, if you want to try it out for the day, see how you like it. But it was more of the same thing as I was for my dad's friend's construction and plumbing business. So I tried it out, didn't really care for it, and I thought, okay, it's time to move on to something else. So I encourage, again, all young kids, before you get settled down with what you want to do as a career and go to school or go to trade school, is try out different things before you make a final decision of what you want to do with your life. Okay? So that is probably the best advice I can give for you right now, and it will save you a ton of money, and it will also will be a great experience for you to know more about yourself and where you want to go with your life and develop yourself as a person and as an employee or a potential entrepreneur. And that's the other thing I like to discuss in this video, is that the idea of going to college is based on you getting a degree in order to impress an employer so you can work for someone else, which is okay, but the most successful businessmen I've ever seen and heard about are not employees. They're entrepreneurs. They are self-employed. And a lot of these guys actually didn't even go to school for it. Say, for example, there's this one guy who I love watching on YouTube. His name is Benjamin Mala. And he is a self-made real estate investor and developer in Florida who never went to college, and he didn't even graduate from high school. But he is worth $250 million, and he's one of the most successful real estate developers in Florida. And seeing him as an example among many other guys, it makes you think you don't need to go to college in order to be successful. So another thing, discussing about the negatives of going to college, is what young kids do nowadays is they are not going for opportunities and actual jobs. They're going for their passions and their hobbies. You know, here's the thing. It's okay for you to have a passion. It's okay for you to have a hobby. But most of the time, there's no money in it. Okay? Say, for example, with me, is that I thought when I was in college and school that I wanted to go ahead and go into music. I wanted to see about learning to play the guitar and the bass and become more of a musician because I love music so much. I like collecting records. I like collecting CDs. I know a lot about music. I thought, why not go for it? But I found out that the music industry is really, really fucked up. You know, especially nowadays, the music is just so shitty. You get signed to major record labels in which they take a majority of all your money, and you have no choice on where you want to do as far as your music. They tell you what to do so they can make money off of you. And I realized also myself, I was honestly not that talented as far as playing the guitar and playing the bass and all that. So realizing all this stuff about music and what my capability was, I realized, no, I gotta do something else. So I still like to go ahead and have fun DJing and cutting, scratching records. And I'm learning how to do that. And if I could do that as maybe a side hustle or maybe as another profession, that would be great. But as of right now, I am working in the culinary industry. I'm working at Red Lobster as a line cook, and I'm also developing more experience and skills so I can work for the better company, get a better job, and then after I gain a good amount of experience working in several jobs and companies, I'll be able to see about opening up a business for myself. Now, discussing about what college disregards about your capabilities is that just because you graduate with a degree doesn't make you any smarter. I think that you were honestly smart all along. You had these skills all along. It's just what college can do for you, that is if you're going something that's practical, is it can help you perfect your knowledge and your skills in a certain profession or job that you want to go for. And even with this, I read this one book called, let's see, what the fuck is it called again? It's this book by Napoleon Hill called 12 Steps to Success, I believe it is. So he discusses in this book about some of the most successful entrepreneurs and businessmen throughout history, such as Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and how they were accomplished what they did. See, what these guys had in common was that they decided to do their own sort of business and do it bigger and better than everyone else. And a lot of these guys didn't even go to school. You know, Thomas Edison, he left school when he was a young kid because he just didn't like it. But he still went on to become one of the most prolific and greatest inventors in world history. And Henry Ford, he only had a 6th grade education, but he was so smart and dedicated and talented with the automobile industry that if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be able to have our mass-produced commercialized cars that we have now. He was the first to do that. So it's thanks to guys like these that we have a better place, that we have a better world, because these guys had the brains and the drive and the talent all along in order to do such great things. Now here's a personal example about the difference between going to school, getting something that isn't practical, and not finding any work and not being successful in life versus somebody who didn't go to school but had a talent and skill all along and has made a good living out of it. I'm going to discuss about my father and his brother, my uncle. I don't want to say their names, but I'm going to go into detail with that. See, my dad, who owns his own independent BMW auto mechanic shop, he didn't even graduate from high school. He dropped out when he was a sophomore. And he didn't like school. He told me that I could learn a lot more about school by watching a program or reading a book than going to a class with a half-assed teacher who doesn't care and learned about it from him. But over the years, when he was young, he knew how to fix things. He said that he took apart a radio that he found in the trash can, put it together when he was a kid and made it work. And then he started fixing bicycles, he started fixing motorcycles, and then eventually he went to cars. And my dad, he learned more about his skills of working on cars from several mechanics, working in several shops, and then he eventually decided to go and open up his own business. And he has owned and operated his own independent shop for over 40 years. Not over 40 years, almost 40 years. And he has made very good money. He is a specialist that has a skill that's in high demand around here for people who own BMWs, and BMWs are pretty expensive cars to work on. I know that because I have a BMW myself. So he has been a successful self-made entrepreneur. Now, my uncle, however, is a bit of a tragic story. See, my uncle, he went the route that a lot of other people did in his generation and this generation today. He went to college and he wanted to go ahead and make it big in Hollywood as a big-time TV show producer and writer and all the other stuff. So he went to an expensive private fine arts college, and he graduated with a master's in fine arts degree. But ever since he moved to Hollywood in the early mid-'80s, he never was able to make it. He tried all these projects and TV shows hoping to make it in the television and movie industry, but it just never happened. Because in that sort of industry and in the entertainment industry, like the music industry, a lot of people want to get into it, but not too many people actually make it. You know, he told me this: it's not about what you do in this industry, it's who you know in order to put your foot in the door. So, and also in that industry, you have to sell your soul in order to make it a lot of times. You have to compromise yourself in order to appeal to the masses. And he just wasn't really willing to do that. So over the years, he had a lot of jobs in which he was an editor and a graphic designer for TV shows, but he just was never really happy. He never really felt fulfilled in life. And he told my dad years ago, I just feel like a failure, you know? And also, years ago, this was 7 years ago, he died. You know, he had problems with sleep apnea and breathing, and he was found dead in his apartment in Hollywood. And it was just real sad, you know? But when we uncovered his personal financing, we found out that when he died, he was still hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. Like, I think it was $200,000, $250,000. That goes to show you, from my personal experience of people I know and other people I've known in different jobs and people personally, I've talked with other guys who have gone to college and they got a degree, they couldn't get anything, and now they work as a busser, or they work as a waiter or waitress or hostess, or they work at Target, or they work at Best Buy, or they work as a barista at Starbucks. That goes to show you what has come to nowadays for going to college. Even 100 years ago, graduating from high school could get you a good paying job, and to be able to support yourself and a family and buy a home, buy a car, because not everyone's going to college. Not everyone's going to high school. But then everyone started graduating from high school. And the marketplace is flooded with people who have a high school diploma, and it's not going to do you any good just to have a high school diploma anymore. And then the next thing is going to college. Everybody go to college and get what you want and what you study that you're passionate about and what you want to follow. And now, what I see nowadays is that, for the most part, the college degree, the bachelor's degree, is basically the new high school diploma. So, what I can say to a lot of the young kids who are thinking of going to college, unless you're going for something that is practical and actually has value in the real world, don't even do it. You're better off doing something else. You're better off going ahead and learning a trade, or maybe starting your own business. Figure out a way to make your own money instead of getting a degree just so you can work for someone else. A lot of the most successful people that I've seen didn't go to college so they can get a job with a reputable employer. They went ahead and they went their own way, they did their own thing, and they decided to go into business for themselves, and they became very, very successful. You know, just like Master P, the CEO and founder of Lone Limit Records, said, don't wait for opportunities. Don't wait for opportunities, make them. And like Mike Rowe said from Dirty Jobs, talking about kids that want to follow their passion, he said, don't follow your passion, follow opportunity. So take heed to everything that I said in this video and what all these other people, that older guys that say if they could do it over again, they wouldn't have gone to college. Take heed to what they're saying. But if you don't want to listen to what I'm saying and what all these other people are saying and see that it is the truth, you are going to find out the hard way. Okay? When you have to move back home with your parents, you can't find a real job with your degree. You could have gotten something straight out of high school, which you're only getting paid minimum wage, and you got to work a bunch of different minimum wage jobs. And not only that, you are in a position which you have to pay back student loans for the rest of your life, because you can't declare bankruptcy on student loans. That's going to follow you. You're basically fucked. You are fucked for the rest of your life. Okay? So, take precaution. Be smart. Look around. See what's actually out there. You know, and like Chris Rock said in one of his recent comedy specials, Tambourine, instead of telling kids you can do whatever you want, we should really tell kids you can do what you're good at, as long as they are hiring, or as Masterpiece said before, don't wait for opportunities. Make opportunities. See y'all next time.